This is a video that shows some of the options that are available to companies accepting professional services payments that wish to use POLi. Now, the options here are the simple options that don't require integration. So for those that have high needs or very specific needs, there are other options available. So we'll start with using payment forms and links. This is a solution that we provide that allows merchants to generate a link or a link with a form for a payment that they wish to receive. So let's start with an example of a generic payment page. So what you're looking at here is a form that I've created in our system, and I've embedded that form into an iframe on our website. Now that might sound complicated, but it's actually relatively simple. Okay, so as a merchant, you would be able to create a form of your own with your own logo and up to 8 of these form fields, which you can individually name, and you can mark as either mandatory, in which case they have an asterisk displayed next to them, or non-mandatory like these fields here. So note that the examples in this video are largely from medical practices, but the functionality would be equally relevant to other types of professional services organizations. Okay, so as a customer, I would basically just fill in the required fields. I could ignore these ones as they're non-mandatory, and then I would click here to proceed and make a payment with POLi. So this is a real-world example of a merchant using this solution. This is a merchant in the travel business, and they have a make a payment menu item on their homepage. And when you click through, you see their form that they've created, so their logo and the fields that are relevant to them, particularly this booking number, which is a unique identifier for all air travel. We've had a look at some example generic payment pages on websites, so it's probably time to take a brief look at how those forms were created using the Pay Now with POLi forms solution. I've logged into the system that allows me to generate and edit forms. So these two menu items here relate to creating forms and creating payment links. So I'll click into the forms area, and this is where we create a new form, or we can edit an existing one from a list of previously created forms down here. So I'll just edit the form that I created for the generic payment page that I showed you earlier. Okay, and you'll see that it's called Pay for a Consultation, and that name is displayed to the customer when they pay. And I could edit that if I wish. And the price, you'll notice, is 0. So if the price is set to 0, that means the customer is going to be prompted for an amount that they wish to pay. I could create this for a fixed amount, but that's not typically useful in a generic payment page on your website where there's a range of values that you need your customers to pay. This section here is where we build a form. So I built it with 3 fields that you've seen before, and just for an example, I'll add a field. We'll call it enter your email address, and I'll tick this so it's mandatory, so input is required by the customer. Now the last section here relates to the data that's going to end up on your bank statement. So there's 3 fields, each 12 characters long, that appear on your bank statement, and you can manipulate the data from the form that ends up in those fields, so you can reconcile that back to your systems. So particulars, I previously had it set to pay for a consultation. That's quite useful, particularly if you've got a number of products or services that you're selling. It's kind of useful to know what you're being paid for. But just for an example, I'll change that to the name of the patient. The code I could change to the NHI number, and the POLi ID is quite useful in itself. That's a serial number for the transaction. Now, if that appears on your bank statement, if there's any issue, that's your key into the POLi system to find out details of that payment. I could equally set it to any of the other fields if I wished. Right, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now if I come to this area here, I can do a number of things with it. I could delete it if I wish. I could view it, which is kind of handy, this allows you to see what your customer is going to see when they land on one of your payment links or your payment forms. So that is useful. I can edit it as you've seen me do already, or I can get the code. Okay, so there's 2 types of code. There's a link code, and this is what I use to embed the form on the generic payment page form in an iframe on the website. And there's also the option to generate button code. So that's going to create a little Pay Now with POLi button, which you can place on your website as well. So those are the ways you can use the form. It may look complicated, but it's actually relatively simple. And if you need any assistance, we're here to help you.
So in order to send an invoice with a specific link embedded in it, we have to generate that link first. So this time we'll select this menu item. And basically we just name the item. So let's call it consultation payment. Let's say it was for $50. And the difference this time is you're not asking your customer to enter any data, you're entering it yourself. So it's largely free text. So I could say it's Mr. Brown, it's invoice 12345, and I could again leave the reference blank for the POLi ID. So I'll save those changes. Just as before, it now turns up as an item here. If I select the code, copy that into my clipboard, I can then embed that in an invoice, paste it into an email, do whatever I wish with it.
Okay, we've had a look at how to generate a form and how to use that within a generic payment page on your website. We'll now have a look at how to use payment links on your invoices. And there's two basic flavors of this. One is a generic link, which is similar to the generic payment page. And what that means is you're creating a link. It could be the very same one that you use for your form on your website, and you're going to embed that link in every single invoice that you send. The other type is one that you would generate specific to the invoice. Okay, and the benefit of that is that you can create it for the right value with the right reconciliation information, so you're not requiring your customer to land on a form and fill that in. The downside of it just requires a little bit more admin effort at your end, because you'd have to do it once for every single invoice. Anyway, let's have a look at what these things look like.
What you're looking at here is a typical invoice that could be sent to you by email by any medical centre anywhere in the country, or by any organisation for that matter. So below the typical payment or invoicing details, you'll notice a couple of options that I've put here that allow you to present a POLi payment option to your customer. So one involves an image and the other involves a link. Now in both cases, this is the link or the URL that's been embedded either in the image or in the text. Now you would only display one or other of these, not both, and you certainly wouldn't include the link. I've just displayed everything to show you what is happening behind the scenes. So I'll click on this here to launch the payment.
So when I click the link, I land, you'll notice, on the generic payment page that I used in the initial example. Now, the reason for doing that is the customer will see that they're on your website, so there's an added element of trust there. And it's just exactly the same as the example I've shown. They'll fill out your form and then they'll proceed to the payment.
The other option we have is to present an invoice with a link that's specific to that invoice, so for the right value. Now this means the customer doesn't have to land on a form. The invoice looks identical, but the difference is rather than embedding the URL for the generic landing page in the link or the image, we're going to embed a URL for a form. So I'll click on this link. You'll notice I didn't land on a form. I've just gone straight into the POLi payment for the correct amount with a reference that, again, I can control. So that could be the NHI number as I've shown, or it could be anything else that I wish to show. And from there, I just select my bank and I'm into a normal POLi payment. Now, as previously mentioned, specific links are great. It means the customers, you're not relying on the customer entering data into a form. The downside is every invoice you send, you'll have to embed a specific link for that invoice. Okay, we've dealt with invoicing and generic and specific links on invoices. The third option in this section is to send a payment request via email, SMS, or some messaging app of some kind. And really all that it means is taking either a generic link, a URL of your generic payment page, or a specific link, and just including that in an email that you send to a customer asking for payment. So no attached invoice, just a payment request via email, SMS, or messaging app. Okay, let's move on to electronic invoicing with Xero. This is only relevant if you use the Xero accounting system or are planning to use it. So Xero has the ability to allow you to connect your Xero system to the POLi payment system. And that means when you send an invoice electronically, the recipient of that invoice can choose to pay that online with POLi. So let's have a look at how that works. Here's an invoice that I've received from the Xero system by email. So you'll notice there's a Pay Now button here, and there's an attachment, a PDF attachment of the invoice as well. So if I wish to pay this online using POLi, I just click here. So when you click the Pay Now button, you land on a portal that's hosted by Xero, which also shows the invoice. And to make the payment using POLi, you simply click this button, and then you're straight into a POLi payment for the correct amount with the right reference. Now, when this is paid, that'll automatically be received in the normal way into Xero, and it will match to make reconciliation easy. So if using forms and links or the Xero functionality is not suitable for your business, you could consider using an electronic invoicing service or an e-billing service, as they are called. Some of the common examples are Office Talk, iStash, or DataPrint. So typically they'll take your billing data, they'll convert your data to PDF and send those to your customer along with electronic payment options. And finally, if you're looking to integrate POLi more tightly with your own systems, well then custom integration is an option for you. That would require your developer to integrate to our web services API. So if that's of interest, or you have any questions about anything else covered in this video, please contact us at support@polipay.co.nz. Thank you.